So hi everyone, welcome to our fifth Symposia session. Today we'll be covering development, retention, and external resources budget. So today we have with us Gareth Davies, who's the Executive Director of Tax Force, Tax Jobs, and TaxTalent. We have Tim Aragon, he's the former VP of International Tax at United Technologies. And we have with us Tony Santiago, President and Founder of TaxTalent and TaxSearch. And later on in our presentation, we'll also have Al Bradley with us. He's the president of the Association of Compeers in Taxation. So he'll be on later on to answer any questions you guys have about our recent webinar that we hosted, how AI and robotics affect corporate tax departments. And so feel free to chat in your questions throughout the presentation. We'll be breaking between each section to answer any questions you have. So chat them in, or when we break, feel free to speak up and ask your questions then. So on that note, I will hand it off to Gareth to kick off with development.
Thanks, Shannon. So one thing I'll start off with saying on development is this is one of those areas that so often can be easily overlooked. But what I will say, development is not only when you're just bringing in new people, it's also for the existing team that you have in place. And people leave. You see on there, the number one reason why people leave is development. If they feel like they're being developed, then things like compensation, hours, they don't play as big a factor in their decision-making to stay or to move from a career. Give you an example, when we screen candidates here, one of the questions we ask a lot of people is kind of, give us your top criteria of what they evaluate opportunities by. And very, very rarely do we ever have anyone that says compensation. Normally the number one position is development. They want somewhere where they can grow and be developed. So that is the number one reason why people do leave. It's really critical to build a culture of talent development. This is the core to a successful department by far. It's not only going to help your department produce better results, but this is going to be the foundation of retaining talent that you have and then attracting talent that you're trying to bring into the company. Trying to get commitment from leadership, I know, can be a challenge, but it is something that you really should invest time to speak with leadership. Try and get them involved in as well. If you have commitment from them in terms of time and resources, then it makes putting a development strategy in place so much easier. Financial leadership have, as you all know, kind of a key say in what goes on. So if you know that tax is supported and you have their buy-in, then it's going to make that much easier for you to start developing developmental plans for your team. And with that, it does start at the top. So any of you that either number ones or number twos, then it starts kind of at the very top of a tax department. So gaining that commitment from upper management, so whether it's the CFO or whoever it may be, having that commitment from them. And then once you get it kind of under control, you then have to kind of teach your team how to do it, and you have to build that throughout the company. So as a VP, making sure your directors have that in place. As directors, making sure your senior managers and managers have that in place. So it's really key that if we can start that at the top, we then show how it goes through the entire department. And I know a lot of you are going to ask, hey, what if I can't kind of get this initiated in my company? And I don't have buy-in maybe from the kind of upper management, or it's really hard to kind of get that buy-in. You'll see kind of that question there. And I'm going to bring Tim, your expertise into this area before I kind of go on to the next part. What would you say to someone that maybe has that issue? They don't have that company initiative or not able to get that buy-in. What would you recommend for someone?
Yeah, you know, I've had some experience where we did a lot of good things on a smaller scale, and I guess what I would suggest is, you know, if you're not able to get kind of the broader company buy-in, think really hard about what kind of influence and culture you can create within the team that you're managing and you're driving and things like that. I think there's a lot of opportunity, a lot of power within sub-organizations within large companies and things here.
Great, I appreciate that. That's a real good insight. And I think once you have that insight, once you have that buy-in, you then have to take the next step, obviously, and that's understanding. And you really, if you have that commitment to understand, or you have that commitment to put this strategy in place, you really then take time to understand career goals and aspirations that's important to each of your team. You've got to know what drives them, what's important to them, where do they want to go in their career, both from a professional and personal standpoint as well. For any of you that kind of get our kind of career satisfaction surveys that we send out each year, the last 5 years that we've done this, respondents time and time again have said they didn't feel like their employer understood their goals. And that's huge. The majority of these people coming back each time and saying that we just don't feel like my boss or my employer understands my goals. And this comes back to understanding. Do you understand? Do you sit down and talk to them about what's important to them? That same study that we do goes on to my next point here, and that's trust. Trust is the ultimate currency in today's world. We talk about this a lot here internally, but it really is true. And when we did that same study, the career satisfaction survey, again, the majority of individuals didn't trust that their employer would actually help them achieve their goals. They're saying, okay, my boss or my employer doesn't understand my goals, but then I don't trust that even if they did, that they'll actually help me put it in place. So if we do anything, let's start with the understanding so we can kind of get a better foot of what we're trying to achieve. Once you have that trust, it's really time to then sit down and create a plan. So understanding is key to be able to, you can't create a plan if you don't understand them. And these plans need to have realistic steps. They need to have measurable timeframes on them as well. But then the most important thing, you see our little graph there to the left. This is what we call the 4 boxes or 4 circles in this picture. And this is kind of the circle of influence and how it all kind of relates into a company. So when you're sitting down to understand someone's career goals and aspirations and you start building that plan, you need to make sure that the individual's needs and wants is in line with what the company has to offer. But then at the same time, what the company's needs and wants is what the individual has to offer. Unless you have those in place, then this is where we start getting into kind of retention and turnover issues. Otherwise, it's very difficult to kind of plan out that next step if, hey, someone's plan is completely unrealistic. But then you have to actually be honest with them as well. If you see that the individual who wants to step up into a VP role and they've never taken on any operations or compliance or accounting, they've only ever done planning, and you know that your CFO is kind of really attuned to what goes on in the operations side, how likely is it that they're going to help you step up in your company? Or maybe you have a director of tax that's the same age as the VP of tax and know that they want to be ahead of tax in the next 2 or 3 years. How likely is that going to happen within your company? So you need to be honest with them. And this comes back to that trust side as well. If you're honest with them, then that's going to kind of build that trust that you have with that individual. So whether it's a plan for development for yourself or one of your team members, make sure that you build those plans, action steps into kind of the day-to-day job, your real-world experience. So if you need to work on strategic leadership, for example, what are you currently working on in the company that's from a strategic perspective? The more you can integrate your daily plan into kind of your plan, your career goals into your daily work life, the easier it's going to be to learn that skill set and to take that step in your career. The next point on there is healthy turnover. And there is such a thing, and it's a true statement right there that you're on your screen. Sometimes some people outgrow companies, and sometimes the company outgrows people. But what I will tell you, don't be afraid of that. It's actually a good thing. If you're doing your job right, and you're actually putting development plans in, you're doing goals with these individuals, and you're helping them grow, you're going to have turnover. That's a given. And so that, as much as we may want to keep hold of everyone that's doing really well and is an A player, it's not always going to happen. And I know we're going to talk about retention more with Tim in a minute, but there is that stereotype that retention is good and turnover is bad. But I'm here to tell you that not all turnover is bad and not all retention is good. And you may be asking, hey, what do you mean by that? And just 2 quick examples I'll give you on both those sides. So not all turnover is bad. Maybe you have that individual that wants to be head of tax in the next 3 years. The VP of tax, the head of tax, has just recently been promoted into that role. Maybe they're the same age, the same years of experience. How likely is it that that individual is going to get step into the role in the next 3 years? Highly unlikely unless something happens. So you know that you're going to lose that person eventually. So the next step is obviously going to be things like succession planning, to have a plan in place so that you can still help that person develop, but then you're covered when that person does move on. So that's a sign of kind of turnover not being bad. Not all retention is good. I'm sure we all have instances where you could tell that you've had a bad performer in the company. Maybe you have someone that's kind of causing a toxic environment, but even after counseling or trying to help them grow, they've just never taken that step up. Retaining someone can cause issues within the tax department, and it can be counterproductive. So this is going to be a case of kind of retention not being good. If you've done all you can do to build a development culture, then as I said, that's okay to have turnover. The best thing you can do is start building that succession plan and start putting plans where the department goes to the next level. Now, within everyone's plan, I think another area that's often overlooked is the importance of a mentor. And we talk to people time and time again that we ask them, okay, who in your career has kind of been your mentor? And we often get people that say, I don't have one, or maybe it's just my current boss, that's the first one I've ever had. But having a mentor can be so beneficial to individuals. Now, it doesn't matter if they're in your tax department, outside your tax department, even outside your company. Having a mentor is really going to be key. And there's a difference between mentoring and coaching as well. So mentoring is really going to be someone that gives you guidance based on their personal experience. So maybe you're someone that wants to develop international tax, you look for a mentor like a Tim who's got great international tax experience. Maybe they can kind of guide you and kind of tell you what to do. Coaching is more about getting that individual to kind of think for themselves. So you're coaching, you're asking the questions how you can help that individual. Kind of what strategies would they put in place? So you talk about wanting to do more international. What do you think you could do to kind of get that international experience? Where would you go? So coaching is more about challenging them, come up with ideas, and kind of help point them in that direction at the same time. So some of the ways that I would suggest kind of finding mentors, you've obviously got your direct supervisor. That's probably one of the first steps that you could take. Asking your direct supervisor, your boss. If you're the lead tax person, maybe there's no one above you. Looking at cross-functional groups. Looking to meet with HR. HR sometimes give you great recommendations of people they know who's a mentor. A lot of you could access your school's alumni network and communication kind of groups that you have, and even groups like TI as well. So there's a lot of different opportunities out there for people to kind of find mentors. One of the ones that, because so many people told us that they didn't have mentors, they didn't know where to look for mentors, as most of you may know already, in the TaxTalent community that we have, we actually built a mentorship program. And it was for this exact reason. People saying, I have no mentor, where do I turn, where do I go? So just to give you an idea, just in the last year, we have over 400 members that are mentor-mentee program users. And currently, we have over 140 active mentor-mentee relationships. So that's kind of showing the power of kind of what mentor-mentee relationships can really do. And one last place I'd kind of say that you can use is outside advisors. So any of you have good relationships with people in public accounting or kind of law firms, they're often partners there and whatnot you can use as mentors as well. So they're the kind of the main tools I would take on development. And just before I kind of hand over to Q&A, one last area I'm going to tell you is don't forget about the plan. You see it time and time again, and it may happen to you or you've seen it happen, is you build your plan, it's on your desk day one, and the next day it goes in a little bit of paper in your drawer next to you, and then 12 months later you take it out again and try and work out why you didn't hit your goals. So we recommend that this should be something in front of something you're actively working on. As I said, build it in your day-to-day responsibilities if you can, but make sure you're sitting down either with your boss or your direct reports at least once a quarter. Because things can change so easily. Maybe it's something from a personal standpoint that's changed with one of your individuals or yourself. Maybe it's from a professional side and they actually want more leadership responsibilities. If you have a meeting with them every 3 months, then you're at least going to be up to see what's going on with them. And that's really going to help you build that trust with them and get a better results from them. So that's kind of all I have for you guys on development. A lot for you to chew on, I know. But before we kind of jump onto Tim going over retention, I will open it up if anyone has any questions for myself, Tony, or Tim that any of us can answer for you. Shannon, did any questions come in kind of while we were going through that?
No questions through the chat.
I've got a question to the group, to participants. This is Tony. How many, if any of you, are actually doing a consistent sit down with your team, your direct reports, not everybody in the department, but your direct reports on a regular basis to do a career check and understanding of where they are, where their objectives are, and giving them some reality feedback sections? And if you're doing it, how often are you tending to do it? And what's been your experiences with those? I'll open that up to business.
Yeah, Tony, it's Eric Rosenfelder, P&G.
Hey, Eric.
How you doing?
Good.
Good. Hey, yeah, so I, kind of new here on the industry side of things, and I have been doing it. I've got a couple direct reports here, and been doing it on, like, I would say maybe every 6 months, but it's frequent and less structured than I was used to when I was on the firm side of things. And maybe the firm has a more defined career path. So I was curious here, maybe what others are seeing, or in terms of more frequent touch points, or how you've built the trusting relationships. I kind of teed up a question to Tim Airgood too on a chat, kind of along those lines, because I'm curious as to how to build that kind of maintained trust relationship when, if it's less defined than maybe what I was used to on the firm side.
Tim, you want to handle that one?
Sure, I'll go ahead and take a shot at a few points here. So first of all, Eric, I think your question is like incredibly important. And over a 30-year career, I can give you examples where I was really bad, and I can give you examples where I was okay. And I think in the later years, some of my learning that I would share with you guys, let people understand that you're a human being a bit more than maybe our tendency, like at least early on in the career and stuff. We're under a lot of stress to deliver results. and you're very focused. You're running all the time, and people are valuing you every minute of the day. I used to have people come into me and say, "I understand you work without your shoes on." It's like, okay, but who cares? And it's silly little things. They're watching every move you make, and they're evaluating every.
Do you have your shoes on?
I don't, Tony. I don't. I promise.
Just checking.
but in some of my coaching towards the latter years, I was encouraged to do what was referred to as a leadership point of view, which kind of shared, my background, what gave my perspective on where I was coming from, things like that. And it really sort of personalized me to the people around me, and it was phenomenal what the result of that was. So that's one thing I would throw out there potentially to think about, letting them understand you as a human being and a person, not as the boss, and running hard. Take a little bit of time out to talk to people and things like that. And the other thing I'd say is just be consistent. Trust if you're trustworthy, and I'm not suggesting anybody here is not trustworthy, but it's in their evaluation. And I think that comes to the consistency and recognizing that they're watching every move you're making, and especially early on, you slip a little bit, they're going to hold that, they're going to throw that flag up on you and things like that. So those are kind of my quick comments on that point. Maybe does that make sense, Eric?
Yeah, it does. Thanks a lot, Tim. Helpful.
And I will tell you from an executive recruiter standpoint, it's one of the wounds I look for immediately. I will probe immediately. I'm working on a couple of global tax positions that are pretty big companies. And I will find out how much time upper management, including the CFO, has spent with the head of tax, and how regularly do they have discussions about career plans and aspirations. And I happen to have in one of my searches a very engaged CFO who is interested in hiring somebody to come in and run tax, but also think about doing things outside of tax down the road. So we talked about that, but I'm using that as a foot in the door. And I'm telling you, maybe 1 out of 20 candidates I'm speaking to has any kind of deep relationship on a one-on-one with their superior. And we find that in lower level positions as well. Very much business relationship, and they know each other type of, do they understand what the person's career goals and aspirations are? Have they counseled with them on how realistic those are? And what do they need to do to get there? What things need to happen, for them to achieve those goals and aspirations, and talking to them realistically about watch what you wish for, you might get it. Having a conversation with them to say, look, taking that role on requires you also to do this, this, and this. Are you prepared for that? Development, staff, leadership, management, cross-functional interface, all those other components at different levels, those things come into hand. So few tax leaders do what you're doing, Eric. Even if, it's not regular right now. You're carrying it over from your public accounting days, which, let's face it, public accounting, their businesses, their people. They get it. For all their comings, they're not fools. Everything they have, they're not selling anything else. So they spend a little more time, a little more focus on it. And again, they have their positions, but again, you still have to talk to candidates about what their market opportunities are. And sometimes you do have to talk to them about thinking about career moves outside the company down the road. That might have to be an option. You have to have a discussion with them with it. And no bigger attraction can happen to a tax department than have a bunch of alumni go on to do great things. It became easy for us at Tyco to staff that company when it was miserable the first 2 or 3 years. But after we started showing that these people were going on to become chief tax officers of other companies, it was very easy to get people to want to attract to that. But those discussions had to be had. They were hard ones to talk to people and say, you might train somebody and they might be there for 4 or 5 years and they might outgrow you. And they might even might leave externally, but they're going to outgrow you potentially if we bring that talent in. We use 3 months for us. We do the same thing every 3 months. I meet with all my direct reports, and then my leaders meet with their direct reports, and we'll go through just making sure nothing's changed, nothing personally's changed, nothing professionally's changed. They still want to move in this direction, and what do we need to do to get there, and how are we doing? How are we as a company doing, delivering on what they need? How are we doing in delivering on what we need? That 4 boxes we talked about. The circle of influence is something I want to reemphasize that we didn't talk about as much, but those are the people that influence those individuals. So for me to talk to a candidate about a career move and not eventually speak to the spouse if it requires a commute, a long distance relocation or something, is ludicrous. I mean, it's both decisions are even critical. Sometimes it's a mentor from the people, an advisor that they've worked with for years, and I need to get a sense as to what that advisor thinks. So you as managing your people, find out who are the people influencing your team, your direct report, and get a sense of where they're coming from. If you can win them over, if you can get their understanding that you are really somebody you can trust and you're not there to hurt the person they care about, then you will have a following there that will be in your favor. This is not an area. Yeah, go right ahead.
Hi, this is Mark Leniato at BNSF. I'm a bit unconventional. I probably spend about 50% of my time doing this. So as an example, I was thinking while you were talking, Tony, I've got a team of 27, including me. I probably touch point with about 6 people this morning. And I touch point today, and we have regular meetings, we have ad hoc meetings, we have leadership discussions every day.
Do you do this with your direct reports, and then you charge your other leaders to do it to their people, or are you doing it yourself and they're not part of that process?
I do everything. So we talk to the leaders. All have to be trained as better leaders, because it's all leadership, and it's not just me, one person. It's every single person of the 27.
So you tier it down. You teach them to do it to their direct reports, correct?
Correct, but I also work one-on-one with the people. Like one of the 6 people that I talked to today was 2 levels down from me.
And that will work at certain size organizations. But keep everybody in mind, if you happen to, go to a 200-person tax department, obviously that's where things unravel. Somebody's got to be put in the context. That's great for your size department, and I think it's the right thing to do, Mark. I fully agree with that. But if you happen to end up in a 40, 50-person tax department, all of a sudden you're going to have to trust these direct reports you have to make sure you've done a great job training them to do it well.
Right, and
you'll have to not.
Basically, they're every different aspect of it. So as an example, we took our annual tax staff meeting that we used to have as just lectures from people in the business, and we broke out into different groups, and we discussed issues. And then I left the room, and they came back, and we talked about it as a group. So we do it, as one-on-one, basically every chance you get, and trust, is what binds it all together.
Yeah, no, that is phenomenal. That's exactly the way to do it. I've had clients, believe it or not, I know you guys think this is crazy. I have clients who brought me in to speak to their clients about career aspirations, goals in the tax field. Talk about, letting the fox in the house. That's right. So why is the recruiter here talking to our people about career direction and growth? Aren't they going to recruit them out? Type of thing. But really, obviously, we were talking about making sure they keep evolving and building equity in their career, and they could have to leave at some point. We talked about it. We talked about internally making moves too, which that company did a very good job. They brought about 6 tax people over into finance, into other roles. Worked out quite well. Does anybody else have any other experiences or questions or frustrations in this area before we go on to Tim?
This is Janera Jones from SABIC. I too meet with my team quite frequently to address our goals and their goals in particular, at least on a monthly basis. And then more broadly, the Global Tax Leadership Team meets formally twice a year to discuss each member on our team for the entire organization. So I think we have done a good job at it. I sometimes don't think we actually have the opportunities available. So I do think the point that you raised about bringing in some ideas about what other opportunities may exist to help them further fulfill their career aspirations is important. I don't think a lot of companies are willing to do that. And that's something that I think we could do a better job at, because quite honestly, I don't think in certain organizations there's enough opportunities to fulfill everyone's career aspirations.
That's true, and things are changing dramatically. I had a conversation over the weekend with a client, and one of their key tax accounting people was getting frustrated, and they're hard to find, as we all know, and there was a risk factor there. And he asked if I would speak to the gentleman, and I did. And I found out halfway through the conversation he had a real interest in the technology side. We just did the AI webinar, and I asked him about bots and things like that. And he said, I've been looking up on my own. I can't get anybody to get involved with it. He said, but I really think that's the future. I went back to him and I said, man, if you'd be willing to take that on, it would be a great thing for us, and we can, that will take him to the next level. I probably give him a promotion down the road, and that whole area is going to grow. And he didn't know about it, but we've been looking at it. It was just a lack of communication to each other, and we put together, and now the guy's all excited about this potential of staying there, and helping lead the bots initiative for the company. So you're right. Sometimes it just takes somebody come there and stick an idea into somebody's head a little bit outside the box. Everybody's in their own boxes, like you said. New people coming in from outside can help stimulate ideas and thoughts. All right, let's move on with Tim. Tim, you want to roll?
Sure. I'd just like to say, Mark and Bernard, the fact that you guys are focused on these leadership points, in my opinion, is tremendous. I didn't really figure it out till way late in my career. And the power of what you're working with and things like that is just phenomenal to me. I just wish so much I would have kind of got it clued in much earlier in the process here. Congratulations. Okay, so we're going to talk about retention here. And I guess as we start out here, the topic is retention, but I want to just kind of throw out to you, I think it may be broader than retention. So even though you keep people, are they excited about their work? So, I think maybe we frame this up as in retention and also people being excited about their work. So they're bringing their whole self in every day as opposed to hitting on 4 cylinders out of 6. Gareth has touched base on the healthy retention, so I don't want to go back over that very much. But again, 100% retention doesn't necessarily mean everything's working out right, because as Gareth points out, the company's moving forward, people are moving forward. That's probably not going to happen at the same pace, and that's fine. The third point here, it's better to risk over investing in people than under investing and have them leave, or worse yet, there was something floating around the internet a while back, about, if they stay, being sort of not such a great thing as well. I absolutely believe this. And, I used to talk to people that work for me about, we had a group of 35 people in 8 or 9 different countries or something like that. And my point to them was, invest in yourself. Our responsibility is help you. If you get really, really good, there's 3 outcomes. One, a position opens up and you get promoted within the company. You get really good and you have the opportunity to move somewhere else. And third, you get really good and you enjoy the culture and everything here so much that you decide you want to stay because of all the other trade-offs and everything. And so I would highly encourage not investing, but certainly not underinvesting in the development. And again, as Gareth would highlight so well, this is such an important point in sort of the whole retention picture. The fourth one I think that has came very interesting to me is that if the development is systemic, it doesn't have to be that complicated. And when we did our process work at UTC, it was like everybody had their day-to-day jobs, and then we sort of said, okay, now we want to build all these quality processes in. And the problem was that everybody viewed it as, well, I got to do my day-to-day, and then I got to do this. And I started thinking about development sort of a similar kind of manner. If you find something separate from the day-to-day work, then yeah, it's going to take a lot of time, and it's going to be difficult to get fit in. But as Gareth highlighted in the first part there, if you can create this systemic kind of approach to development and make it part of the practice of everybody's day-to-day work, to me that's the win-win. And then it's not, and okay, so maybe there's a couple of training classes or a couple of coaching or mentoring sessions thrown in there, but it doesn't have to be this piling of something else. It's simply the synergy of creating the development within the day-to-day context. I think is so powerful. So I just want to share, we talked, I mentioned up above about people not only retaining people, but making sure they're excited when they come into work. This book, Leading at a Higher Level, I think the last session I probably mentioned, I think every time I talk about development leadership, I mention this book. It's phenomenal in my opinion. But they highlight 3 areas that really excite people in any organization. First of all, having worthwhile work. And in tax, I don't think that's a difficult one, but sometimes I do think it may take a little extra communicational effort to make sure that everybody understands how the work is tied into the significant impact that tax overall is having on the company. Being control achieving their goal, that's given them the autonomy, the tools, like the development, the skills and things like that to move forward, achieving the goals. And then finally, caring for each other. So Shannon, I think we can move on. Okay, so when we look at development, again, this idea of it being systemic, so it's not sort of an add-on thing, I think is very, very interesting, important to me. Clearly defining what success looks like. And I can remember how many times, people coming in for their performance reviews, and you kind of go through them, and it's like, well, yeah, you need to work on your presentation skills. Okay, perfect. And we go through a discussion, and everybody walks away, and there's nothing. That's not really giving people an idea of what it is they need. And that was certainly a clear failure for me early on, and things like that. And I think that painting this picture for people of what success looks like, both from a technical and non-technical, can really, really help give them a vision and understand what it is they're working towards. And then from there, identifying the gaps and having the straightforward discussions about, okay, if that's what success looks like, and here's where you're at, then what kind of plans do we need put together? And I'm a huge believer that these plans have to be practical and they have to be practicable in the context of current work. Otherwise, there's part of me that, I can remember like 2-day training classes, you walk out and it's like, wow, I'm so glad I'm done with that. And that's 2 days I'll never get back, and get back to work, and you never apply it. So how valuable was that 2 days? And I think that's the key part. There's a component for training, but that training has to be integrated with the practice in these plans. And then establishing the accountability. Gareth touched on this about, putting the plan in place, goes into drawer, 12 months later, you kind of recognize that this slipped. Another aspect I think around this accountability is that sort of I've been thinking about a bit, is putting some kind of project management around development. And so you think about all the important projects and undertakings that go on in tax, and a lot of times they'll have project plans, who's got to do what when. They've got milestones for reviews along the way. And when it comes to development, almost, I've never seen it. And I'm scratching my head thinking, well, geez, why wouldn't that have a role to play here? So then this idea of understanding blocks. After I retired, I engaged in some coaching training, because I was learning that I failed to pick up. Through that, I was introduced to an idea that, a lot of us have blocks that prevent us sort of from moving forward. There are things like limiting beliefs, like, I'm a 58-year-old man that the world has nothing more to offer, so I might as well not even try. There's interpretations, and the interpretation might be, for example, I'm sitting in a meeting and my boss, I put something out there and the boss says, no, that's not right. That doesn't make any sense. This is and I sit there and I interpret it like he just told me I'm stupid. So every time I come in to interact with him again, I'm bringing along this baggage that, he thinks I'm stupid, so I got to prove something or do something. The A is for the assumptions, or another one is assumptions. And that is, well, it happened. This is what happened last time. Therefore, it's got to happen. It's going to happen that way again. So I might as well not even try. And I've got some really good examples there, but I won't take time for that right now. And then finally, the fourth block that I was kind of reduced to was these gremlins, these little things in our head that are telling us that we're not good enough, or that we're not smart enough, or that we're fake. You're going to get found out one of these days, and stuff like that. Those things that just eat away inside your head. And the point of bringing it up here is that, as you put development plans in place, the question to me is, it feels like you may be limited as to how far you can go if you don't take a little bit of time and at least make people aware of some of these limitations or these blocks that they could be dealing with, and give them an opportunity to think about it. And then the idea of utilizing, as Gareth pointed out earlier, using outside resources such as mentors or coaches to kind of help facilitate this. And part of the point here is that you guys are crazy busy. Obviously this really needs to be a priority, but if I think it's sort of like a tax advisor. Why not an advisor to help with this kind of stuff as well? So that's on the development side, just leverage off of some of Garrett's, but such an important part of retention here. And then obviously making sure that people are being paid at market value. And if you're not sure, the benchmark studies are fantastic. Tony, Tax Search and TaxTalent do so much good stuff. This survey on employee satisfaction, the salary benchmarks and stuff like that. There's a lot of really good information available for kind of seeing where things are at. Okay. Open communication, and this starts going to the trust point that Eric was talking about. I think that transparency creates trust, and couple very important learning points for me. In the absence of information, people will make it up. So if I say I need to be out this morning because I got to go to the doctor, this is a real story. People have me dying. And they fill in the blanks. People will fill in the blanks. So if you have an important message, go ahead and finish that message, and think hard about going ahead and creating more transparency as opposed to less, because in a group of, as Mark pointed out, 26 people, there will be 26 interpretations of what that blank meant. The other key learning, I think, was, if it's important, say it over and over and over. I think one of the components of change management, one of the components of building trust, if you say it once and drop it, that probably wasn't enough, and you just got to keep reinforcing your key principles over and over and over. So then we go to the culture and integrity. I think the culture that you create and the opportunities that you provide are significant impact on retention. And what's really cool to me is that in your roles, you have the opportunity to create whatever culture you want. And the question is, do you let it develop by default, or do you target a culture and you work towards it? And this goes back to Garrett's question, in my opinion, that you know, even you don't need the company behind you to create your culture, and it may be very different on the outside, but what you want to create on the inside can be done. I'm absolutely convinced of that. You know, again, part of the trust point, following through on what you say. When you're recruiting, you know, it was very important to me, and I think it's very important to be honest with people that you're bringing in. And if you make promises, follow through on them. And the same is true of the people that are with you today. If you say that something's going to happen, follow through, because that's part of the evaluation that's going to be going on. Facilitate a culture where people are free to speak up and tell you what they need, and then give them what they need to succeed. You know, I certainly worked in the cultures where people just didn't want to put their head up, and as a result, you know, they may be lost, they may not know exactly where to go, and that's just kind of getting buried underneath the day-to-day efforts. And as you guys were talking earlier, you know, knowing your people, these points of the ongoing conversations, I think showing care and concern as a human being, not just from a professional standpoint, is critical and important. And, you know, certainly not prying into people's business that they don't want to talk about things, but, you know, caring enough about them. We've all got other things going on, and you know, from time to time I've heard people talk about work-life balance, and work's one thing and life is the other. And in my view, we have one life. It's all the same thing. And I don't understand the distinction. So it's hard for me to think about, you know, being effective with people if you're not kind of somewhere on the whole picture here. Listening, you know, probably greatest skill, greatest example of respect to people, actually listening to them. And then finally, I think this idea of empowerment, this is another one that to me is incredibly positive, incredibly powerful. You know, the creation of an organization that releases the knowledge and experience and motivation in people. So, you know, you can either lead through a command and control type structure, or you can empower people and think about, you know, leading them from a servant leadership standpoint and providing them what they need. You know, I have my own opinion, and as the world gets more complicated, it seems clearer and clearer to me, kind of where sort of HR cultures need to shift and things like that. But these are decisions that you guys get to make. And then finally, you know, there are models out there, and I have done quite a bit of work with the Blanchard companies, and this situational leadership too is a model where it sort of sets up the one-on-one conversations. It helps people understand how important it is that employees ask their leaders for what they need and things like that. You know, there's some idea out there that you should be able to read minds. And, you know, trying to help them overcome that and create that culture where they're free to talk to you is so valuable too. So I think those are the key highlights I think we wanted to go through today.
Hey, Tim, can I ask you a quick question?
Absolutely.
So the question is this year, the first year, we're going to have, my wife and I have invited our whole department and their spouses, about 50 people, to our home for a holiday party. And my view is that the work and the life is not just about the employees, but also their spouses, like Tony mentioned. And this gets a chance not just for me to see the spouses, but for them to see each other. And we've also invited the CFO, and she's going to come for part of it. I'm just curious if other people have done that and what sort of the reaction is as part of the whole package.
I'm going to stay silent as a question to the rest of the group, Mark. I think it's fantastic myself, but anybody else got thoughts on that?
I don't know of any people doing that I've seen do it. So I think that's great that you're doing that. Open that transparency to your family and everything. I've had some clients do it as a group, not at their houses though. Whatever, you know, offsite facility. That's probably about the closest I can say to that.
Yeah, Tony, it's Eric at P&G, and we've done that with over at Tim's house a number of times. We kind of have an annual picnic over there. Now, it hasn't been with spouses. There was a Halloween party that he put together, though, a year ago. That was nice, and you did get a chance to see a fair number of people. I think it is a really nice connection point for folks to, meet each other's families, because you don't get very many opportunities for that.
I'll be interested to see what you think about it, Mark. How it worked out for you and the families afterwards.
And just a comment, Mark. I view life as a bunch of overlapping circles. I view the world a little weird, probably, but I see it as a bunch of overlapping circles, and spouses and families are part of these overlapping circles. I think what you're doing is really cool.
Yeah, and the idea came from the former CFO here at BNSF. Used to have that for all the top people in finance department, maybe the top 50 people. So it'd be about 100 people at his house, and it was around May. He called it, Cinco de Mayo party with margarita machine and stuff. And his wife would give everybody a gift. And just the fact that the CFO, had everybody into his home made a big impression on everybody.
I'm impressed with your wife.
Yeah, now she had one requirement, which was I had to get catering, or otherwise she's not going to do it. So I had to have fried chicken. So I think
you got off easy.
Yeah, it's going to be good. I'll report back.
Yeah, please do.
Any other thoughts on the retention from the rest of the group? You guys think this makes sense, or are there anything that kind of popped out especially?
Hey, Steve Caravello,
are you on the line?
Steve's a participant.
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Steve, so the question that I would say would be rather rattling around in your mind might be about compensation. When you're in an industry that's kind of been depressed, hard to get good raises, pay bonuses. So you have a challenge with that, I would imagine, in this market.
Yeah, and I think we've felt the impacts of that. I mean, we've had some significant turnover in the past year. I think most individuals, when they leave, it's not per se compensation, like the actual amount, but the uncertainty in the industry, and they're concerned about will I have a job in the next 6 months or a year. But yeah, no, it is a challenge. But I think the way we've gotten around that, at least for the key people that we want to keep, it's the constant messaging up to upper management, the CFOs, the CEOs, others that clearly indicate to them the value that we're adding to the organization, and that, hey, maybe it's worth going out of the norm and recognizing somebody with a small token of appreciation, which can sometimes go a long way, especially in tight times when you say, hey, across the board, no one's getting a raise. But by the way, you've been specifically sort of highlighted as an exceptional contributor, and so we were giving you a small token, nothing close to what you would have been entitled to, but that goes a long way. And so we work very closely with management, upper management, like the CFO, to constantly deliver what is it that we're adding value to the organization, so that when we have those conversations about, hey, John Smith, he hasn't had a raise in 2 years, wouldn't mind just giving him a small token, small percentage, just to recognize what he's just done in the last 6 months for us. And generally that, I think there's a great appreciation for that. But I think your earlier conversations on the training and the development, it's a theme, and it's extremely difficult. I think, was it Eric that said, hey, when you come from public accounting, it's very structured. It's there. There are people that's what they do full time, is the development and training and keeping you on that schedule, that every 3 months, 6 months, you need to touch base with your people. In industry, it's that structure is just not there, and it is self-discipline in order to put it in play. And I think once you do, it works. It's just keeping up with it. So it's those first year as trying to get that on your calendar, and it's probably the simplest thing is just, put on your calendar every 2 weeks at least one person's name or one lunch or something, so that you always have that meeting already set up, so you don't have to remember put it on your calendar.
Has anybody gotten any help from HR on the development side using some of their resources? Curious.
I think here at Weatherford, one of the things, I think HR is taking a more vested interest, and they're trying to mimic the what you see in public accounting, i.e. like they want you to have those conversations. They want you to document your reviews and have those sort of performance reviews, goal settings. It's just they're trying to develop something that's not, say a lot of them, it's not in their nature, so they don't have the systems to do that. Where some of the public accounting firms, of course, that's already embedded into the process.
Yeah.
At least that's what I'm seeing from here.
Yeah, Steve, it's Eric. That's been similar experience for me here. That there's a decent sized HR group. There is sort of a system that they want to implement. It's there, but it's not culturally consistent, and it's not enforced or part of the culture really as much as it was in public. Nor is it the expectation of the people, which is kind of one of the things as well, is that they don't want to have necessarily. They're not expecting a conversation every 6 months about where it's going.
It's more of a procedural thing that they just know that you need to go through the routine in order for me to get my merit increase at the end of the year, because it's just a procedural thing. I have to click on this button. I have to sign off on this. So I don't. It's not as. I agree with you. You don't see the people sort of gravitating towards it and really saying, "Oh, can we have that sit down? Can we talk about it?" At least my perspective is, "Oh, you just need me to sign this so I can, go through the motions."
Yeah.
But like I said, that's probably more of your, individuals that haven't had the experience of public accounting. And I think when we have a bunch of individuals that have come from public accounting or from law firms, and they are expecting that every 3 months, sitting down with you and having that conversation. And it is, when you get bogged up in everything else, I know Tim mentioned it, he takes a lot of time, or somebody else was mentioning, taking the time to do that, or somebody on the call mentioned, hey, 50% of my time is on staff development. I'm wondering how you find the time, because I think I'm lucky if I can get 5% of my time on staff development.
Day is very long, so I guess the thing is, I still do the full-time job that you guys do, but I spend that extra 4, 5, 6 hours a day doing the development. And the way I look at it is I can only do so much, but the 26 other people can do a lot more than I can. So that time is well invested.
Yeah, it's just a mindset, right? It's a mindset you have to get yourself into.
Okay, Shannon, let's move on to the next section. All right, I'm going to kind of go through this a little quick. Shannon, has Al come on board yet?
Yes, he's on, I believe. Yep.
Perfect. All right, so staffing budget. Guys, we all know you guys are getting hammered to do more with less. And there's a couple of areas that you basically can focus on and should be focused on to manage effectively. And you have three options with your staffing budget. Besides having your in-house team on your budget, that is outsource certain components of functions, co-sourcing where you're doing partial outsourcing, and then when you have your project-based consulting work that you're filling in for your existing team, which a lot of times we're going to public accounting firms for law firms for those sort of things. So outsourcing is always an interesting dilemma. Most likely used in situations where there's transitions. IEG is a good example. Transitioning with locations, transitioning with downsizing of the company. As you guys all know, they announced another 25% reduction. It makes sense in that case to do outsourcing for a period of time and then reevaluate. As we go through tax reform, depending upon what comes through, there might be opportunities for that. Some of us old guys know in '86 we did quite a bit of that. Use the public accounting firms to outsource until we built up internal resources. Co-sourcing is always an interesting scenario. And that is one where they're partially outsourcing components of it. Usually can make sense. There's internal outsourcing and external. I view shared services groups as an outsourcing function and a co-sourcing function. There should be significantly cheaper rates to be had in the near future. These organizations that you outsource to or co-source to are developing robotics at a rapid rate. The types of work we tend to outsource or co-source tends to be repetitive in nature. Indirect taxes and certain other components of the income tax lend itself to that. And now we'll speak to that in a minute and answer your questions for those of you guys who listen to the AI webinar. So we should be prepared to negotiate harder rates on that end. The shared service groups, I think, are at risk in the near future, in 2, 3, 4, 5 years from the bots. So if you're using India or wherever else, it's going to be hard for you to compete unless you want to build bots yourself or lease them from the public accounting firms that will charge you an annual lease and upfront cost to build them. So it's going to be interesting which one wins out there. Project-based consulting. Since we outsource more work, we use bots to do more of the mundane work. We'll have more time to do the high-end work in-house if we can afford the people. So I think the increase in percentage of time of doing it yourselves in-house will go up as we shift the resources away from the mundane stuff to the more high-end work. You're also going to see development of the gig economy. These baby boomers who have retired, people like Tim who still want to do work. In his case, he's focusing on the development consulting side. I have many others and younger people who want to work on their own. So our tax force model is just going to be one of many. And the price points you can get the talent for is dropping down like a rock, especially on the higher end work. So it's kind of ironic. You're not going to save a lot on the low-end compliance provision, but you're going to save a tremendous amount on M&A, integration work, or transfer pricing related project, things like that. It's going to put pressure on the outside advisors. So the climate for managing these budgets and reducing the costs, I think is actually quite favorable. It does require you to put some time into this and understand it. But you know that it's going to pay back huge dividends. So I want to use some of my time to lend itself into Al answering some questions that you guys might have on the AI webinar. What robots will do, bots or RPA it's called, versus artificial intelligence. And you can dovetail questions for both of us into that session. Al, are you on board?
Yes.
Hi, Al. How are you doing?
Doing pretty well. Just another day.
So we had almost 500 people registered for that webinar that we put on. So it's obviously a point of interest. You guys now get a chance to throw questions directly at Al related to what the future might entail in those areas. And any questions you want to dovetail to me on the staffing budgets, we'll handle them together. Is anybody in the group using RPAs at all?
We've been exploring it, but we don't think we have a lot of opportunity because our group doesn't do a lot of routine tasks. We're finding that we think we have a lot of opportunity with the data analytics tools like Alteryx. And we've found some success on automation and compliance improvements with that already.
Do you outsource most of your repetitive work then?
No, we just don't have much of it.
Really? Even in the indirect tax area?
That we do have some stuff in the indirect tax, but we have a complicated indirect tax area. So we're exploring what our options are to set up data lakes and work with our different data sources to create some opportunities, but it's not as simple as using bots. We haven't found bot opportunities like people would have expected.
Do you have a, by any chance, do you have an indirect tax engine?
We have Zabrix.
Okay, so you're using the Thomson product. And are you primarily a sales tax driven or a use tax driven or a mix of both?
We're mostly on the purchase side, sales and use tax, but not on the, shipping services are not subject to sales tax, so it's not on that side.
Okay, so you're mostly on the procurement side, so it's more of a use
Yeah.
tax, self-assessed or vendor charge tax type of environment.
That's correct.
Yeah, then I can understand why, to some extent, from an indirect tax perspective, as far as transactional tax perspective.
What about property tax, Al?
I was just going to say, but do you guys have an in-house property tax function or have any type of property tax exposure?
Yeah, we have an in-house property tax function of 7 people, but we're centrally assessed. So, 3 of those people spend almost all of their time negotiating with state assessors. 1 person's full-time GIS, and 3 people work with the counties and pay over 25,000 bills a year. And we've looked at bots, OCR, and various other options with those people. But, we think we found some opportunities, but they're not with bots. They're with using some kind of data automation and some service providers that will link in directly with the counties. Because as you know, EDI is something you can force on your vendors, but you can't force it on a government.
Yep, understand. And just out of curiosity, your property tax focus, is it business personal property or real property?
Both.
Both.
But it's centrally assessed. So for the most part, we're talking about valuations that occur at the state level, and then the bills go down over 28 states, and a lot of property. We have a very big property tax liability.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it really, and I'll just open it up to people who may have questions. That when it comes to robotics, AI, data analytics, data visualization, it really depends on your company's structure, especially the structure of your tax department, the data that you're utilizing, your data sources. So it really depends on what fits your profile. And I know for what we see at ACT is we see profiles similar to yours. Now, I'm not sure which company you're from, and it's not like you really have to.
Yeah, it's BNSF Railway.
Okay.
And we're members
of
ACT as well. So
yeah, okay.
Just to give a quick plug for you guys, we had a couple of guys in my department I paid to go to your annual conference this year, and that ended up making us learn about this Alltrex, where we had PwC come in and teach us about it. So I think just being part of the association has helped us.
Okay, yeah, and I'm familiar with the company now. I didn't want to force you to tell us what company you were with, but so yeah, I mean, with ACT, we see various different companies that there's certain things that they can use at our conference, and there's certain things that don't fit their profile. But most of the time, as you've just shared, it seems to be that a company finds something, and if not a number of things, that can help their tax function. I know for myself personally, with the company that I work with, which is Airgas and Air Liquide, we find very much a good amount of information out of ACT and what we can use for our process. And we were similar to what you just described, we were more based off of data analytics. Like we thought a data analytical tool would help us more, and it has helped us more. But then we found that there are also repeatable processes that we could leverage bots off of. So we're going down that path of, different types of proof of values and what so have you to kind of streamline those processes, automate them so that we can take the human element out of it and let those associates focus on other value-added tasks. So it really depends, but it's definitely going to be the future. Robotics, data analytics, visualization, AI is the future of the finance organization, not just tax, and especially your business process improvement teams. So.
And for the short run, Al, we talked about robotics, data analytics, data visualization being the things maybe in the short run we should brush up on and be on top of. And AI is the big monster that might come down and change a lot of things, but it's a little more down the path. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. Just to let you know, Tony, you're echoing. But I think that AI is definitely not the short run. I mean, that's just my opinion. Now, if you speak to as far as a Big Four professional in their field of automation, they may disagree. But when it comes to AI, you really have to again understand your processes, but at the same time understand that you're going to possibly take out the human element altogether. So a lot of people, they get a little worried when they hear about robots because they think, oh, where's the bot going to sit? Where's the bot going to go? Is the bot going to take over my job? And that's not it. Robotics is near term. AI is probably where most of any type of technologically advanced, or at least forward-thinking CFO or VP of tax is probably going to think about eventually. I don't know how many of the attendees on this call were on the robotics call, but there's an example of how forward-thinking AI is with an artificial intelligence, Watson, and how I described one of the firms. I'm not going to go into any names because I don't want to really push anyone out there, but one of the firms basically fed Watson some code as far as the Internal Revenue Code is concerned in regards to M&E and R&D credits. And then it fed it questionnaires, and it was able to spit out an answer on what your M&E deduction should be and what your R&D credit should be. So there's a lot of work that has to be done before we need to really get worried as tax professionals if we're going to be completely replaced. But again, it's something to learn about and understand because they're still going to need the human element to make sure that it's making the right decision.
Anybody have any other questions? Okay, I think we're close to wrap up, Shannon.
Yep. So I'll make sure everyone gets the recording of this of our webinar today, and just to give you a heads up, we will be having a second webinar for AI with the same speakers, Al Bradley, Tim McDonald from P&G, and then also Sharda Sharu from EY. So we will be having a follow-up one, especially since we didn't get to cover all the content we wanted to. So I'll make sure you guys are among the first ones to get the invitation for that because we filled up very quickly for the first one too. So I'll make sure again that you guys are first to be invited. And so I'll be sending out the recording, and if anyone has any follow-up questions, feel free to post them on the forum as well. And I think that's it.
Thanks, everybody. Take care, everyone.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Al. Thanks, Tim.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.